The massive alien ship floated in the darkness of space like a glowing crystal. Its surface shimmered with blue and purple lights that pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. The ship was 3 miles long and shaped like a beautiful flower made of metal and glass. This was the Eternal Harmony, the most important ship in the Zephyrian fleet. Inside the ship, hundreds of alien beings moved through corridors that hummed with energy. The Zephyrians looked like living shadows made of light. They had no solid bodies like humans. Instead, they were pure energy that could take different shapes. Sometimes they looked like tall figures with flowing robes. Other times they appeared as balls of bright light that danced through the air. Ambassador Veltar stood in the main ceremonial chamber of the ship. This room was enormous, with walls that curved up into a dome covered in stars. Real stars, not pictures. The Zephyrians had found a way to capture starlight and display it on their ceilings. Veltar was older than most of his people, and his energy glowed a deep golden color that showed his wisdom and age. Today was a special day. 3 months ago, the Zephyrians had made contact with a new species called humans. These creatures lived on a small blue planet called Earth, far away in a distant part of the galaxy. The humans were very different from the Zephyrians. They had solid bodies made of flesh and bone. They breathed air and ate food and did many strange things that energy beings did not understand, but the humans seemed friendly. They had sent messages of peace and friendship. They wanted to trade and learn from each other. The Zephyrian leaders were pleased. They always enjoyed meeting new civilizations and adding them to their great alliance called the Collective. The Collective was made up of 12 different alien species from 12 different star systems. Some were like the Zephyrians, made of energy. Others were more like plants or machines or even stranger things. But they all worked together in peace and harmony. They shared knowledge and resources and helped each other grow and learn. Now the humans wanted to join this great alliance. The Zephyrian Council had agreed to consider their request. As a first step, they would exchange gifts and learn about each other's cultures. The humans had already sent their gift, and today was the day to receive it. Ambassador Veltar looked at the small crowd gathered in the chamber. There were other Zephyrian officials, scientists, and military leaders. There were also representatives from several other collective species. Everyone wanted to see what the humans had sent. In the center of the chamber sat a small metal container that had arrived just hours ago. It was about the size of a large box and made of simple gray metal. The humans had sent it in an automated cargo ship with a message that made everyone very excited. The message was short and simple: a token of friendship and sustenance for our new allies. We hope you will accept this gift as a sign of our desire for peace and cooperation between our peoples. The word sustenance had caught everyone's attention. Sustenance meant food or nourishment. The humans were offering to share their food with the Zephyrians. This was a very important gesture in galactic diplomacy. When different species shared their food, it showed trust and friendship. It meant they wanted to take care of each other. Of course, the Zephyrians did not eat food the way humans did. They did not have mouths or stomachs. Instead, they fed on energy. They absorbed radiation from stars, electricity from machines, and electromagnetic fields from planets. Any kind of energy could nourish them and keep them strong. The human gift was perfect for this. When the Zephyrian scientists scanned the metal container, they found it was full of incredible energy signatures. The readings showed massive amounts of concentrated power inside the small sphere. It was like a tiny star packed into a metal ball. "The humans are very generous," said science leader Kathara, her energy form flickering with excitement. "This gift contains more energy than we usually consume in a full cycle. They must have worked very hard to create something so concentrated." "It shows they understand our nature," agreed Military Commander Dexter. "They could have sent us their own food, but instead they thought about what we would need. This proves they want a real friendship, not just a political alliance." Ambassador Veltar nodded slowly. He was pleased but also careful. In his long life he had seen many first contacts between species. Some went well, and some went very badly. The key was always to move slowly and make sure both sides understood each other. The gesture is indeed thoughtful, he said. But we should be careful. The humans are still very new to galactic society. They may not understand all the implications of their gifts. What do you mean? Asked Cathara. I mean that sharing sustenance is not just about friendship. In many cultures, when you accept food from someone, you create a bond with them. You become part of their family or tribe. The humans may expect us to do the same for them. Would that be so bad? Asked a young officer named Linda. The humans seem very interesting. Their messages show they are curious and brave. They built machines that can travel between stars even though they have solid bodies. That shows great determination. Veltar smiled, his energy form glowing brighter. You are right, young one. The humans do seem remarkable. But we must be sure we understand them before we make any permanent bonds. The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. A technician approached the group and bowed respectfully. Ambassador, a human gift has been prepared for consumption. The energy absorption chamber is ready, and all safety protocols have been activated. Veltar looked around the room. Everyone was watching him expectantly. This moment would be broadcast to all 12 worlds of the collective. Billions of beings would see the Zephyrians accept the human gift and form the first bond between their species. Very well, he said. Let us proceed. The group moved to a smaller chamber next to the main room. This was the energy absorption chamber, where Zephyrians came to feed on concentrated power sources. The walls were lined with special crystals that could store and channel energy safely. In the center of the room was a raised platform with the human gift sitting on top of it. Up close, the gift was even more impressive. It was a perfect sphere made of polished metal that reflected the chamber's lights. The surface was covered in tiny symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and move when you looked at them. The humans had clearly put a lot of work into making it beautiful. The energy readings are incredible, whispered Cathara as she scanned the sphere with her instruments. I have never seen anything like this. The power levels are off our charts. How much energy does it contain? Asked Veltar. Enough to feed 12 Zephyrians for several cycles. The humans must have used very advanced technology to pack so much power into such a small space. Veltar was impressed despite his caution. The humans were much younger than the Zephyrians as a spacefaring species. Earth had only developed faster than light travel 50 years ago, but already they could create energy storage devices that amazed even the advanced collective races. They are learning quickly, he said. This bodes well for their future in the collective. The feeding ceremony began with traditional songs and prayers. The Zephyrians sang in harmonies that sounded like wind chimes mixed with distant thunder. Their voices created waves of energy that made the chamber's crystals glow brighter. Ambassador Veltar approached the platform slowly. This was the most important part of the ceremony. As the highest-ranking Zephyrian present, he would be the first to taste the human gift. His reaction would determine how the rest of his people viewed the humans. He extended his energy tendrils toward the sphere. These were like invisible arms made of pure power that Zephyrians used to manipulate energy and matter. As his tendrils got closer to the human device, he could feel the enormous power contained within it. The energy is so dense, he said to the others. It feels like touching a miniature star. Be careful, Ambassador, warned Commander Dexter. We still do not fully understand human technology. But Veltar was already committed. The ceremony was being broadcast across the galaxy. He could not show fear or hesitation now. That would insult the humans and damage any chance of future cooperation. His energy tendrils made contact with the sphere's surface. Immediately he felt a rush of incredible power flowing through him. It was like drinking lightning or swimming in the heart of a star. The energy was pure and clean and more delicious than anything he had ever experienced. For a moment, Veltar was lost in the sensation. This was the most wonderful gift he had ever received. The humans truly understood what would please the Zephyrians. This sphere could feed their entire diplomatic mission for months, but then something went wrong. The sphere began to vibrate. At first, it was just a gentle humming like the sound of distant engines, but quickly it grew louder and more violent. The platform started to shake, and the chamber's crystals began flashing warning colors. Veltar tried to pull his energy tendrils back, but they seemed to be stuck to the sphere. The device was drawing power from him now instead of giving it. The energy was flowing in reverse, and he could feel his strength being drained away. "Ambassador!" shouted Cathara. "Something is wrong." Alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and automated voices began speaking in urgent tones. The ship's computer was detecting something dangerous, but no one could understand what was happening. Commander Dexter rushed to his personal scanner and pointed it at the human gift. What he saw made his energy form flicker with shock and fear. "It's not a food source," he said in a voice barely above a whisper. "It's a weapon." "What?" Veltar managed to gasp as he struggled to break free from the sphere. "The device contains fissile materials in a state of rapid decay. The energy we detected is not stored power. It is the signature of an uncontrolled nuclear reaction." The meaning of these words hit everyone in the chamber like a physical blow. The humans had not sent them food. They had not sent them a gift of friendship. They had sent them a bomb dot, and Ambassador Veltar's attempt to feed on it had activated its countdown sequence. "How long do we have?" asked Cathara, her voice tight with panic. Dexter checked his scanner again. The numbers were changing rapidly, counting down toward 0. "Approximately 4 minutes," he said. "Then the device will explode with enough force to destroy this entire ship and everything within 1,000 kilometers." The chamber erupted in chaos. Officers ran for emergency exits. Scientists grabbed their most important equipment. But Veltar remained frozen on the platform, still connected to the human bomb, unable to break free. He stared at the sphere in disbelief. The beautiful patterns on its surface now looked like threats. The elegant design seemed like a mockery. The humans had created this weapon specifically to kill him and his people. They had wrapped it in pretty decorations and called it a gift. But why? The humans had seemed so friendly in their messages. They had talked about peace and cooperation. They had asked to join the collective and learn from the older races. Why would they try to assassinate the very people they claimed to want as friends? The answer came to him as he watched the countdown continue. This was what humans were really like. All their talk of friendship was just a trick? They were killers. And liars who used deception to destroy their enemies. They had lured the Zephyrians into a false sense of security and then struck without warning. It was the most evil thing Veltar had ever encountered in his long life. And now he and his ship and his crew were going to die because they had been foolish enough to trust these violent creatures. The countdown reached 3 minutes and kept falling. Unless someone found a way to stop it, the humans would have their first victory against the collective, and it would not be their last. The emergency sirens wailed through every corridor of the Eternal Harmony as Commander Dexter worked frantically at his control panel. His energy form flickered between different colors as stress and fear coursed through him. The human bomb was still counting down, and they had less than 2 minutes left. "Can we eject it?" shouted science leader Cathara over the noise of the alarms. "Negative," Dexter replied, his voice tight with concentration. "The ambassador is still connected to the device. If we try to move it, the energy feedback could kill him instantly." Ambassador Veltar remained frozen on the platform, his golden energy form now pale and dim. The human weapon was still draining his power, and he could barely speak. But his mind was clear enough to understand what was happening. The humans had tried to murder him in front of the entire galaxy. "Evacuate the ship," he whispered, though his voice was so weak that only the closest officers could hear him. "We will not leave you, Ambassador," said Cathara firmly. "You must," Veltar gasped. "Save yourselves. Do not let the humans claim more victims." But there was no time for evacuation. The countdown reached 30 seconds, then 20, then 10. Everyone in the chamber braced themselves for death. They closed their energy forms tight and prepared for the explosion that would end their lives. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Nothing happened. The bomb's countdown reached 0, but no explosion came. Instead, the sphere simply went dark and stopped vibrating. The dangerous energy readings disappeared, and the connection between Veltar and the device suddenly broke. The ambassador collapsed to the floor, weak but alive. For several minutes, nobody moved. They all stared at the silent sphere, waiting for it to explode. But it remained perfectly still and harmless. What happened? Asked Cathara finally. Commander. Dexter scanned the device again with his instruments. The nuclear reaction has stopped. The bomb has deactivated itself. How is that possible? I do not know. Perhaps it was designed to malfunction. Or perhaps the humans planned this exact scenario. Veltar slowly pulled himself upright, his energy form still flickering weakly. It does not matter how or why, he said. What matters is that the humans tried to kill me. They sent a weapon disguised as a gift, and they nearly succeeded. The implications of this statement hit everyone in the room. If the humans had tried to assassinate the Zephyrian ambassador, it meant they were not interested in peace. It meant their friendly messages had all been lies. It meant they were planning some kind of attack on the collective. We must inform the High Command immediately, said Dexter. Within an hour. Emergency messages were speeding across the galaxy to the 12 home worlds of the collective. The news spread like wildfire through their networks. The humans had revealed their true nature. They were killers and deceivers who could not be trusted. The High Command of the collective met in emergency session on the crystal world of Zephyr Prime. 12 different species gathered in the Great Council Chamber, their forms ranging from energy beings like the Zephyrians to plant-like creatures to mechanical entities that look like walking machines. High Counselor Murthan, the oldest and wisest of the Zephyrians, called the meeting to order. His energy form was so ancient and powerful that it appeared almost solid, like a statue made of living light. Fellow counselors, he began, we face a grave threat. The humans have attempted to murder our ambassador with a primitive nuclear device. This act of treachery cannot be ignored. The other counselors murmured agreement. Some species communicated through sound, others through light patterns, and still others through electromagnetic pulses. But they all understood the seriousness of the situation. What do we know about human military capabilities? Asked Counselor Vexra of the silicon-based Crystalline Republic. Very little, admitted General Coulter, the Zephyrian military leader. We have only had contact with them for 3 months. Their technology appears primitive compared to ours. They still use chemical rockets and nuclear fusion for power. Their fastest ships can barely reach 1/10 the speed of light. Yet they nearly killed our ambassador, pointed out Counselor Heselin of the Plant-like Verdant Alliance. We should not underestimate them simply because their technology is crude. General Coulter activated a holographic display that showed images and data about human civilization. We have been studying their broadcasts and communications since first contact. What we have learned is disturbing. The display showed scenes from human history. Battles with thousands of dead soldiers, cities destroyed by bombs, weapons designed to kill millions of people at once. The counselors watched in horror as they saw how humans treated each other. They are a violent species, continued Coulter. Their entire history is filled with wars and conflicts. They have weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They create devices specifically designed to cause suffering and death. But surely they would not use such methods against us. Sighed Counselor Taimara of the energy-based Photonic Consortium. We are far more advanced than they are. They must know they cannot win a direct confrontation. That is exactly why they tried assassination, replied General Coulter. They know they cannot defeat us in open battle, so they resort to treachery and deception. The bomb was just their first attempt. If we do nothing, they will try again. Hi. Counselor Murthan studied the images of human warfare with growing alarm. He had lived for over 1,000 years and seen many different species join the collective. Most of them were peaceful by nature. Even the more aggressive races could be reasoned with and taught to control their violent impulses, but humans seemed different. They appeared to enjoy violence. They created art about war. They told stories that glorified killing. They built monuments to their greatest warriors. Violence was not just part of their nature, it was their culture. "What do you recommend, General?" asked Murthan. "We must strike first," Coulter said firmly. "The humans have shown they cannot be trusted. They will continue to plot against us until we stop them. I recommend we send a fleet to their home system and force them to surrender. And if they refuse, then we destroy their military capabilities and place their planet under collective supervision. We have done this before with other aggressive species. Once they see our power, they usually become more reasonable." Some of the counselors nodded agreement, but others looked uncertain. Military action was always a last resort for the collective. They preferred diplomacy and negotiation. "Perhaps we should try to communicate with them first," suggested Counselor Nath of the Aquatic Oceanic Federation. "There might be some misunderstanding. The bomb could have been an accident." General Coulter shook his head. "An accident? They sent a nuclear weapon disguised as food. How could that possibly be an accident?" "Their technology is primitive," Nath replied. "Maybe they made a mistake in their calculations. Maybe the device was supposed to be a power source, not a weapon." "Even if that were true," said Coulter, "it would prove they are too dangerous to be allowed freedom. A species that cannot tell the difference between a gift and a bomb should not be trusted with nuclear technology." The debate continued for hours, but gradually the counselors reached a consensus. The humans had proven they were a threat to galactic peace. They could not be allowed to continue developing weapons while plotting against the collective. Military action was necessary. "Very well," said High Counselor Murthan finally. "General Coulter, you are authorized to assemble a pacification fleet. Your mission is to travel to the human home system and force their surrender. Use whatever force is necessary, but try to minimize casualties. We are not conquerors, we are peacekeepers." "Understood, High Counselor. How large a fleet will you authorize?" Murthan considered this carefully. The humans were primitive, but they had shown they were cunning and dangerous. It would be better to send too many ships than too few. 200 vessels, he decided. Capital ships, cruisers, and support craft. That should be more than sufficient to handle anything the humans can deploy. Within days, the largest military fleet in collective history was assembled in the Zephyr system. 200 ships of various designs and capabilities, representing the combined military might of 12 different civilizations. Some ships were elegant and beautiful, like crystalline sculptures that could fly through space. Others were more practical, built for function rather than form. The flagship was a massive Zephyrian dreadnought called the Righteous Purpose. It was over 5 miles long and equipped with weapons that could crack planets. General Coulter took command of the vessel and began planning the attack on Earth. The fleet's technology was centuries ahead of anything humans possessed. They had gravity manipulators that could crush ships without firing a shot. They had quantum scramblers that could disable electronics from thousands of miles away. They had molecular disintegrators that could break down matter at the atomic level. Most importantly, they had energy shields that could deflect any known form of attack. Human nuclear weapons would be useless against collective defenses. The whole campaign should be over in a matter of hours. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the human government was in a state of panic. They had been trying to contact the Zephyrians for days, but all their messages were being ignored. The aliens had stopped responding to diplomatic communications completely. President Sarah Martinez stood in the war room of the Global Defense Command, surrounded by military advisors and scientists. The mood in the room was grim. "What's the status of our explanation?" she asked. Dr. James Chun, the head of the first contact team, shook his head sadly. "We've sent the technical specifications for the fusion reactor over 100 times. We've explained exactly what went wrong with the translation matrix. We've even sent video messages with our top scientists explaining the mistake. But there's been no response. Maybe they don't believe us, suggested Admiral Rebecca Torres, the head of Earth's space fleet. Or maybe they don't care, replied General Marcus Rivera. Some species are just naturally aggressive. Maybe the Zephyrians were looking for an excuse to attack us. President Martinez rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. 3 months ago, first contact with aliens had seemed like the greatest moment in human history. Now it looked like it might be the last. What are our defensive capabilities? She asked Admiral Torres. Limited, Torres admitted. We have 12 ships capable of interstellar travel. Most of them are exploration vessels with minimal weapons. Our planetary defenses consist of missile batteries and a few orbital platforms. How does that compare to alien technology? There's no comparison. Based on what we've seen of their ships, they're centuries ahead of us. If they want to destroy Earth, there's very little we can do to stop them. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Humanity's first contact with aliens was about to become humanity's last contact with anyone. Sir, said a young technician at a monitoring station, I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching the outer system. Multiple contacts moving at faster than light speeds. Admiral Torres hurried to the technician's station and looked at the readings. Her face went pale as she saw the size and number of the approaching fleet. 200 ships, she whispered. They're bringing 200 ships to fight 12. President Martinez closed her eyes and tried to think of some way to avoid the coming disaster, but she knew it was too late for diplomacy. The aliens were coming to destroy Earth, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. The only question now was how many humans would die before it was all over. Captain Marcus Rivera floated in the medical pod deep inside his ship, surrounded by tubes and wires that connected his body to the vessel itself. His eyes were closed, but his mind was fully awake and alert. Through the cybernetic implants surgically placed in his brain and spine, he could feel every part of the ship as if it were his own body. The ship was called the Indomitable Spite, and it had once been a simple cargo hauler that carried supplies between Earth's colonies. But over the past week, Rivera and his crew had transformed it into something entirely different. They had turned it into a weapon that could fight impossible odds. Rivera felt the ship's engines through the neural connection. 3 nuclear reactors burned at 150% of their normal capacity, pushing out more power than they were designed to handle. The metal hull groaned under the stress, and warning lights flashed constantly throughout the ship. But the engines kept running, driving the vessel forward at speeds that should have been impossible. He felt the cargo holds where his crew slept in crash-resistant pods. 50 volunteers had agreed to join this mission, knowing they would probably never see Earth again. They were soldiers, engineers, and pilots who had families and friends back home. But they also knew that if this mission failed, their families would die when the alien fleet reached Earth. The pods kept the crew alive during the crushing acceleration that would otherwise turn their bodies into liquid. Special drugs flowed through their blood to protect their organs from the intense forces. But even with all these protections, some of them might not survive the journey. Rivera tried not to think about that. Most importantly, he felt the weapons. The cargo holds that once carried grain and manufactured goods were now packed with kinetic kill vehicles. These were simple but deadly weapons, metal rods the size of telephone poles that could be fired at incredible speeds. When they hit a target, they released energy equal to a nuclear bomb. The ship also carried nuclear missiles, plasma torpedoes, and experimental beam weapons that the military had been developing in secret. Everything Earth's weapons designers could build in 1 week had been crammed into this single vessel, but the most dangerous weapon on the ship was Rivera himself. The neural implants allowed him to control every system directly with his thoughts. He could fire weapons, adjust engines, and navigate through space faster than any computer. The ship responded to his will like it was part of his own body. The surgery to install the implants had been risky and painful. The doctors had warned him that the neural connection might drive him insane or kill him within days. But Rivera had volunteered anyway. Someone had to pilot humanity's last hope. and he was the most experienced combat pilot on Earth. Through his sensors, Rivera could see the alien fleet approaching Earth's solar system. 200 ships of incredible size and beauty moving in perfect formation. Their energy signatures were unlike anything humans had ever encountered. Each ship generated more power than Earth's entire electrical grid, but Rivera was not intimidated. He had spent his career fighting against superior odds. He had flown missions against rebel colonies that had better ships and more weapons. He had learned that the key to victory was not having the best equipment, it was being willing to do things. Your enemy would never consider the aliens thought like civilized beings. They had rules and traditions that governed how they fought wars. They tried to minimize casualties and preserve valuable resources. They built beautiful ships that were meant to last for centuries. Humans were different. They built ships to be destroyed. They trained soldiers to die for their cause. They created weapons specifically designed to cause maximum damage with no regard for the cost. To the aliens, this would seem like madness. To humans, it was just another day at war. Rivera's ship was proof of this philosophy. Everything about the indomitable Spite was designed for a single mission with no expectation of survival. The life support systems had been stripped out to make room for more weapons. The beautiful decorations and comfortable quarters that adorned civilian ships had been replaced with armor plating and ammunition storage. Even the crew quarters had been sacrificed. Instead of beds and recreation areas, the ship had crash pods and medical equipment. The men and women sleeping in those pods knew they were not passengers on this journey. They were ammunition to be expended when the time came. The alien fleet entered the outer edge of the solar system, moving with the confidence of beings who had never faced a real challenge. Their ships spread out in a classic battle formation, with the largest vessels in the center and smaller escorts forming a protective screen around them. Rivera studied their movements through his neural link with the ship's sensors. The aliens were following standard military doctrine for a superior force attacking a weaker enemy. They expected Earth's small fleet to meet them in traditional battle formation. They probably planned to demand surrender before opening fire, but Rivera had no intention of fighting a traditional battle. Admiral Sarah Chun commanded Earth's defense fleet from the bridge of the battleship Defiant. Her 12 ships were positioned around Earth in defensive formations, but she knew they could not stop the alien armada. The best they could hope for was to delay the enemy long enough for civilian evacuation ships to escape. Chun had been a naval officer for 30 years before joining the space fleet. She had fought in wars on Earth's oceans before humanity reached for the stars. She understood the mathematics of warfare when facing overwhelming odds. Conventional tactics led to certain defeat. That was why she had approved Rivera's mission. The indomitable Spite was humanity's attempt to change those mathematics. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet," reported her communications officer. "Put it on the main screen." The image of General Coulter appeared on the bridge display. The alien leader looked like a figure made of golden light, beautiful and terrible at the same time. When he spoke, his voice was translated into English by the ship's computer. "Human military forces. I am General Coulter of the Collective Fleet. You are ordered to surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. Your species has committed an act of war against the Collective by attempting to assassinate our ambassador. Resistance is futile and will only result in unnecessary casualties." Admiral Chun stepped forward and activated the transmission system. "General Coulter, I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Fleet. The device that nearly harmed your ambassador was not a weapon. It was a fusion reactor that malfunctioned due to a translation error. We have sent you complete technical specifications proving this." "Your lies will not save you," Coulter replied coldly. "We have analyzed the device. It contained enough fissile material to destroy our flagship. There is no way this could have been an accident. The fissile material was the fuel for the reactor. The translation error caused the safety systems to fail, turning it into a weapon. We never intended to harm anyone. Even if that were true, it proves your species is too dangerous to be allowed freedom. A civilization that cannot control its own technology should not possess nuclear weapons." June felt her anger rising, but she kept her voice calm and professional. General, we are willing to make reparations for any damage caused. We want peace between our species. Peace will come when Earth is under collective control. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will take your planet by force. The transmission ended, leaving Chun staring at a blank screen. She had expected this response, but it still hurt to see diplomacy fail so completely. Now the only option left was war. All ships prepare for battle, she ordered. We may not be able to win, but we can make them pay for every mile of space. The Earth fleet began moving into attack formation, but their movements were interrupted by an unexpected sensor reading. Admiral, I'm detecting a single ship approaching from the outer system. It's moving at incredible speed, almost 10% of light speed. Shun frowned. No human ship could achieve that velocity with a living crew aboard. The acceleration forces would be lethal. Can you identify the vessel? It's the indomitable Spite, Captain Rivera's ship. But the energy readings are off the charts. I think they've overloaded their engines. Shun smiled grimly. Rivera had exceeded even her expectations. She had hoped his ship might serve as a distraction or suicide bomber. But if he could maintain that speed, he might actually damage some alien vessels before being destroyed. Patch me through to Captain Rivera. Rivera's voice came through the communication system, distorted by static and interference from his overloaded engines. Admiral, this is the indomitable Spite. We are beginning our attack run. Captain, your approach vector will take you straight through the alien formation. Are you sure about this? Affirmative, Admiral. We're going to show these aliens what happens when you threaten humanity. General Coulter was reviewing the final attack plans when his sensors officer reported the approaching human ship. At first he dismissed it as irrelevant. A single vessel could not threaten a fleet of 200 ships. But as the human craft got closer, Coulter began to realize something was wrong. The ship was accelerating at rates that should be impossible for any vessel with a living crew. Its energy output suggested engines running far beyond safe parameters. What kind of ship is that? He asked his science officer. It appears to be a converted cargo vessel, General. But the modifications are extensive. I am reading weapons signatures throughout the hull, and the power output is unlike anything in our databases. Are there life signs aboard? Minimal. Perhaps 50 beings in some kind of suspended animation. But there is one active life form that seems to be connected to the ship's system somehow. Coulter studied the sensor readings with growing unease. The human vessel was clearly some kind of suicide attack, but its design was unlike anything the collective had encountered. Most civilized species would sacrifice a ship to save their fleet, but they would never deliberately kill their own crew. Members, General, the human ship will reach our formation in approximately 6 minutes. Should we engage it with our escort vessels? Coulter considered this. The human ship was fast and well-armed, but it was still just one vessel against 200. His escorts could destroy it easily without putting the main fleet at risk. Yes, order the forward escorts to intercept and destroy the human vessel. But be careful, it may be carrying nuclear weapons. 6 collective destroyers moved to intercept the indomitable Spite. These ships were elegant and deadly equipped, with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Their gravity disruptors could crush the human vessel without even touching it. But as they closed in for the kill, Rivera made his move. Through his neural connection with the ship, he could see the alien vessels approaching. Their movements were predictable and coordinated, following standard military doctrine. They expected him to either surrender or fight a conventional battle. Instead, Rivera did something no civilized being would ever consider. He overloaded every nuclear reactor on his ship simultaneously and aimed directly at the center of the alien formation. The indomitable Spite became a flying bomb traveling at 10% of light speed. When it exploded, the energy release would be equivalent to 100 nuclear weapons. And the explosion would happen right in the middle of the alien fleet. The escort ships fired their gravity disruptors, but Rivera's ship was moving too fast and generating too much interference. Their weapons could not lock onto the speeding vessel. In desperation, the aliens tried to ram the human ship with their own vessels. But Rivera was ready for this. At the last second, he released his cargo of kinetic kill vehicles. Thousands of metal rods shot out from the indomitable Spite like bullets from a shotgun. They spread out in all directions, each one moving at incredible speed. The alien escort ships flew directly into this deadly cloud. The impact was devastating. The kinetic weapons punched through alien shields and armor like they were made of paper. 3 escort ships exploded instantly. 2 more were crippled and began spinning out of control, but Rivera was not finished. As his ship raced through the gap in the alien formation, he fired every weapon he had left. Nuclear missiles, plasma, torpedoes, and beam weapons lashed out at the larger alien vessels. Most of the weapons were stopped by alien defenses, but a few got through. The collective cruiser Golden Dawn lost its forward section to a nuclear missile. The destroyer Swift. Current was cut in half by a plasma torpedo, and then Rivera reached the center of the alien formation. He smiled as he felt his ship's reactors reaching critical mass. The neural implants let him experience the approaching explosion as if it were his own heartbeat. In a few seconds he and his crew would be dead, but they would take a significant portion of the alien fleet with them. "This is for Earth," Rivera whispered. The indomitable Spite exploded like a new star being born in the depths of space. The explosion of the indomitable Spite lit up space like a miniature sun. The blast wave expanded outward in all directions, carrying enough energy to power a small planet for years. When the light finally faded, 7 collective ships had been destroyed and dozens more were damaged. General Coulter stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the expanding cloud of debris where the human vessel had been. In his 1,000 years of military service, he had never seen anything like what had just happened. The humans had turned one of their own ships into a weapon and killed their entire crew just to damage his fleet. "Casualty report," he ordered, his energy form flickering with shock and anger. 7 ships destroyed, 18 damaged, replied his tactical officer. "We have lost approximately 2,000 crew members." The humans achieved a kill ratio of 40-1. Coulter could not believe what he was hearing. 40 aliens dead for every human. In a single attack, the primitive humans had inflicted more casualties on the collective than most species managed in entire wars. How is that possible? "We have the most advanced shields and armor in the galaxy." The human ship was moving at 10% of light speed when it exploded, General. At that velocity, even our shields could not absorb all the energy. The kinetic weapons it fired were also moving at incredible speeds. They punched through our defenses like they were not there. Commander Veltar, who had survived the assassination attempt and joined the fleet, studied the tactical displays with growing unease. "General, I think we have misunderstood something fundamental about human warfare." "What do you mean?" "Look at how they attacked us. They did not try to preserve their ship or save their crew. They turned their entire vessel into a single-use weapon. This suggests a completely different approach to combat than what we are used to." Coulter nodded slowly. The collective had fought many wars over the centuries, but they had always followed certain rules. Ships were valuable and took years to build. Crews were trained professionals who represented significant investments in time and resources. No civilized species would waste such assets on a single attack, but the humans seemed to view their ships and crews as expendable. "Ammunition, sir." "We are receiving a transmission from the remaining Earth vessels," reported the communications officer. "Put it on screen." Admiral Chun appeared on the display, standing on the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, Coulter could see human officers working at their stations. They looked calm and determined despite facing overwhelming odds. "General Coulter, I am Admiral Sarah Chun. You have just experienced a small demonstration of human military capabilities. Captain Rivera and his crew died as heroes, and their sacrifice will be remembered forever. But they were only the first." "You speak as if you have achieved some great victory," Coulter replied. "You destroyed 7 of my ships at the cost of 50 human lives. That is hardly an efficient exchange." Chun smiled coldly. You think in terms of efficiency, General. We think in terms of results. Captain Rivera proved that your ships can be destroyed. Your shields and armor are not invincible. That knowledge is worth any price. You have 11 ships remaining. We have 193. Do you seriously believe you can defeat us? We do not need to defeat your entire fleet, General. We only need to make the cost of victory higher than you are willing to pay. The transmission ended, leaving Coulter staring at a blank screen. There was something deeply disturbing about the human admiral's words. She had spoken about death and sacrifice as if they were normal parts of warfare. Most civilized species tried to avoid casualties whenever possible. General, the human fleet is moving to engage us, reported the tactical officer. Coulter looked at the tactical display and saw the 11 Earth ships accelerating toward his formation. They were vastly outnumbered and outgunned, but they showed no signs of hesitation or fear. Very well. All ships prepare for battle. But be careful, these humans are more dangerous than they appear. The Earth ship Valiant was the first to engage. The alien fleet. It was a heavy cruiser armed with nuclear missiles and railguns. Under normal circumstances, it would have been destroyed in minutes by the superior alien weapons, but Captain Lisa Park had no intention of fighting a normal battle. As her ship approached the alien formation, she ordered her crew to begin emergency modifications to their nuclear warheads. Instead of using the missiles as projectile weapons, they would detonate them as close proximity bombs. All hands, prepare for ramming speed, she announced over the ship's communication system. The crew of the Valiant knew what this meant. They were going to ram their ship into the largest alien vessel they could find. Most of them would die in the impact, but they might be able to cripple or destroy an enemy capital ship. Captain Park aimed her vessel at a massive collective dreadnought called the Eternal Glory. The alien ship was 5 times larger than the Valiant and armed with weapons that could vaporize planets. But it was also slow and could not maneuver quickly enough to avoid the approaching human vessel. The aliens fired everything they had at the Valiant. Energy beams and gravity disruptors hammered the human ship, tearing holes in its hull and killing dozens of crew members. But the ship kept coming, its engines pushing it forward even as it fell apart around the crew. At the last moment, Captain Park detonated every nuclear weapon on her ship simultaneously. The Valiant disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire that engulfed the front section of the Eternal Glory. When the explosion cleared, both ships were gone, but this was only the beginning. The Earth destroyer Relentless followed the same tactic, ramming itself into a collective cruiser. The frigate Determined crashed into an alien destroyer. One by one, the human ships sacrificed themselves to destroy much larger alien vessels. General Coulter watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart by suicidal human attacks. Each Earth ship that died took 2 or 3 collective vessels with it. The humans were achieving impossible kill ratios by using their own ships as weapons. "This is madness," he said to Commander Veltar. "How can they fight this way? Do they not value their own lives?" "I think they value something more than their lives," Veltar replied. "They are fighting to protect their homeworld. They would rather die than see their families enslaved." As the battle continued, Coulter began to intercept human communications. What he heard chilled him to his core. The human crews were not afraid or desperate, they were angry. They spoke about revenge for Captain Rivera and his crew. They talked about making the aliens pay for threatening Earth. One transmission particularly disturbed him. It came from the captain of the Earth battleship, defiant as his ship prepared to ram a collective heavy cruiser. "This is Captain James Morrison to all human forces. Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth, we are showing these aliens what happens when you threaten humanity. Make them remember this day. Make them fear us." The captain's voice was calm and professional, as if he were discussing the weather rather than his own imminent death. This was not the voice of a desperate soldier making a last stand. This was the voice of someone who had chosen to die and was satisfied with that choice. The Defiant exploded against the alien cruiser in another nuclear fireball. Both ships were destroyed, but the human captain had achieved his goal. The aliens were beginning to fear the humans. "General, we have destroyed the entire Earth fleet," reported the tactical officer. "But we have lost 43 ships in the process." Coulter stared at the casualty figures in disbelief. 12 human ships had destroyed 43 collective vessels. The humans had achieved a kill ratio that should have been impossible with their primitive technology. But the worst part was yet to come. "Sir, I am detecting multiple energy signatures approaching from the inner system. It appears to be human reinforcements." "How many ships?" "Approximately 50 vessels." "But they are not military ships, General?" "I am reading cargo haulers, mining vessels, and civilian transports." Coulter felt a chill run through his energy. Form. If the humans were sending civilian ships into battle, it meant they were following the same doctrine as their military. Every vessel would be converted into a weapon. Every crew would be willing to die. The approaching human fleet was a motley collection of ships that had never been designed for war. There were asteroid miners with plasma cutters converted into weapons. There were cargo ships loaded with nuclear waste that could be used as dirty bombs. There were passenger liners that had been stripped of their civilian equipment and packed with explosives. Leading this ragtag armada was the converted colony ship New Horizons. Captain Elena Rodriguez had volunteered to command the civilian fleet after hearing about the military sacrifice. Her ship carried 3,000 colonists who had been heading to a new world beyond the solar system. But now they were heading into battle instead. "All civilian vessels, this is Captain Rodriguez. Remember, we are not soldiers, but we are still human. Our military comrades showed these aliens what we are capable of. Now we must prove that every human is willing to fight for Earth." The civilian ships attacked with the same suicidal tactics as the military vessels. But they were even more unpredictable because they had not been built for combat. Their weapons were improvised and their defenses were minimal. But they made up for these disadvantages with creativity and determination. The mining ship Asteroid Breaker used its industrial equipment to tear chunks of metal from destroyed alien vessels and hurl them at other ships. The cargo hauler Heavy Load converted its magnetic crane into a weapon that could rip alien ships apart. The research vessel Deep Explorer used its scientific instruments to disrupt alien communications and navigation systems. Each civilian ship fought until it was destroyed, taking alien vessels with it whenever possible. The colonists aboard the New Horizons sang hymns as their ship rammed into a collective battleship. The miners on the Asteroid Breaker cheered as they crashed into an alien destroyer. General Coulter realized he was not fighting a military force. He was fighting an entire species that had weaponized itself. "General, we have intercepted human data transmissions," reported his intelligence officer. "They contain detailed information about human military history and doctrine." "Show me." The holographic display filled with images and documents from human wars throughout history. Coulter saw battles where humans had fought to the last soldier rather than surrender. He saw weapons designed to poison entire continents. He saw strategies for fighting wars across multiple planets. But the most disturbing information was about human psychology. The files explained how humans viewed warfare as a natural part of existence. They did not fight to capture territory or resources. They fought to completely destroy their enemies. "Look at this," said Commander Veltar, pointing to a particular document. "It is called Nuclear Doctrine. The humans have plans for destroying their own planet rather than allowing it to be conquered." Coulter read the document with growing horror. The humans had built weapons capable of rendering Earth uninhabitable. If they faced defeat, they would trigger these weapons and kill every living thing on their world rather than submit to alien rule. They would commit genocide against their own species? According to this, they call it acceptable losses. They believe that if they cannot win, they should make sure their enemies gain nothing from victory. More human ships were approaching from the outer planets. These were industrial vessels from the asteroid belt and mining colonies. They had been converted into weapons platforms and packed with nuclear explosives. Their crews consisted of miners. engineers and factory workers who had volunteered to join the fight. Coulter realized that every human in the solar system was now a potential enemy combatant. Men, women, and children were all willing to die to protect their homeworld. They would fight with military ships, civilian vessels, and their bare hands if necessary. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission from Earth," said the communications officer. This time, the transmission came from President Martinez herself. She stood in what appeared to be a bunker deep underground, surrounded by military officers and government officials. "General Coulter, you have now seen what happens when you threaten humanity. We do not surrender. We do not negotiate. We fight until either you are defeated or we are all dead. But we have one more thing to show you." The president gestured to someone off-screen, and new images appeared on the display. They showed massive underground facilities filled with nuclear weapons, rocket silos containing intercontinental ballistic missiles, orbital platforms equipped with planet-killing weapons. "These are our final defenses, General. If your fleet reaches Earth, we will detonate every nuclear weapon on our planet simultaneously. The explosion will be visible from your homeworlds. Earth will become a radioactive wasteland, but your fleet will be destroyed along with us." Coulter stared at the images in shock. The humans had turned their entire planet into a weapon. If he continued the attack, he would win a dead world and lose most of his fleet in the process. "We offer you one final choice," President Martinez continued. "Withdraw your fleet and accept our explanation for the fusion reactor incident. Or continue your attack and face total war against a species that considers extinction unacceptable. Price for victory." The transmission ended, leaving Coulter alone with his thoughts. He had come to Earth expecting to fight a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, he had encountered something far more dangerous than any advanced technology. He had encountered humans at war. General Coulter stood in the command center of his flagship, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been the most powerful fleet in collective history. Of the 200 ships that had entered the human solar system, only 120 remained. 80 vessels had been destroyed by an enemy that possessed just 60 ships in total. The mathematics of the battle made no sense by any civilized standard. The humans should have been crushed within hours. Their technology was centuries behind. Collective standards. Their weapons were primitive nuclear devices compared to the elegant energy weapons of advanced civilizations, but the humans had turned their primitive technology into something far more dangerous than any advanced weapon. They had weaponized their own willingness to die. Commander Veltar approached the general with a datapad containing the latest intelligence reports. His energy form was dim and flickering, showing the stress and exhaustion that all the collective officers felt after witnessing human warfare. "General, we have completed our analysis of human military doctrine," Veltar said quietly. "The results are disturbing." Coulter took the datapad and began reading. What he saw confirmed his worst fears about humanity. The files contained detailed records of human conflicts spanning thousands of years. Wars where entire armies had fought to the last soldier. Battles where humans had deliberately destroyed their own cities rather than surrender them to enemies. The humans called it scorched earth tactics. If they could not win, they would make sure their enemies gained nothing from victory. They would poison water supplies, burn crops, and demolish infrastructure. They would turn their own lands into wastelands rather than allow occupation. "Look at this section about their nuclear weapons doctrine," Veltar said, pointing to a particular part of the report. "They have something called mutually assured destruction. If any enemy attacks them with planet-killing weapons, they will respond by destroying that enemy's homeworld, even if it means their own destruction." Coulter read the section with growing horror. The humans had built enough nuclear weapons to destroy every planet in the galaxy. They had submarines hidden in their oceans, each carrying missiles that could turn entire worlds into radioactive waste. They had satellites orbiting their sun, equipped with weapons that could cause stars to explode. They would really destroy themselves just to hurt their enemies? According to their own historical records, yes. They have done it before on a smaller scale. During their Second World War, human soldiers would call in artillery strikes on their own positions if they were being overrun by enemies. They preferred to die rather than be captured. The general continued reading, and each page made the situation seem more hopeless. The humans did not fight wars to capture territory or resources. They fought wars to completely eliminate their enemies. They had no concept of acceptable losses because they considered any sacrifice worthwhile if it led to victory. Sir, we are receiving multiple transmissions from human colonies throughout the galaxy, reported the communications officer. It appears word of our attack has spread to their settlements. Show me. The main display filled with messages from human colonies on dozens of worlds. Men and women in mining equipment, farming clothes, and civilian dress stood before cameras and spoke directly to the collective fleet. This is Colony Administrator Sarah Kim from New Terra. We have received word of the unprovoked attack on our homeworld. All civilian ships in this system are being converted to military vessels. We will arrive at Earth within 2 weeks. This is Captain Michael Chun of the merchant vessel Far Trader. We are loaded with industrial equipment and heading to Earth at maximum speed. These tools will be converted to weapons when we arrive. This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the research station at Proxima Centauri. We are abandoning our scientific mission and returning to defend Earth. Our knowledge of alien technology will be used to create more effective weapons. Dozens of similar messages filled the display. Human colonies throughout the galaxy were abandoning their peaceful activities and rushing to join the war. Farmers were becoming soldiers. Scientists were becoming weapons designers. Children were being trained to fight. But the most disturbing message came from a human military officer on a distant world. This is General David Park from the Outer Rim Defense Force. Be aware that if Earth falls, we will begin systematic attacks on all collective worlds. We have identified the locations of your 12 home planets. We have ships positioned to strike your colonies. If humanity dies, the collective dies with us. Coulter realized that the humans had been preparing for this possibility since first contact. They had spread their population across the galaxy specifically to make them impossible to eliminate completely. Even if Earth was destroyed enough, humans would survive to wage a war of revenge that could last for centuries. General, we are receiving a priority transmission from the High Command. Announced the communications officer. The image of High Counselor Murthan appeared on the screen. The ancient Zephyrian leader looked tired and concerned. Behind him, Coulter could see other collective officials arguing frantically. General Coulter, what is your status? We have been monitoring the battle, and the casualty reports are unacceptable. High Counselor, the humans are more dangerous than we anticipated. They do not fight according to any civilized rules of warfare. They use suicide attacks and total war tactics. Are you telling me that 80 of our ships have been destroyed? By primitive humans? Yes, High Counselor. And if we continue this attack, we will lose many more. The humans are willing to destroy their entire planet rather than surrender. They have weapons capable of eliminating all life on Earth, and they will use them if we land troops. Murthan was silent for a long moment. Behind him, the other counselors continued their heated debate. Finally, the High Counselor spoke again. General, we have been in communication with representatives from other species who have encountered humans. The reports are consistent with what you describe. What do you mean? The plant-like beings of the Verdant Alliance report that human colonists on their border worlds have been building fortifications and weapon stockpiles. The machine intelligences of the Digital Consortium say that humans have been developing computer viruses capable of destroying entire digital civilizations. Every species that has met humans reports the same thing. They are preparing for total war. Coulter felt a chill run through his energy form. The humans had not just been preparing to defend Earth, they had been preparing to fight every species in the galaxy if necessary. High Counselor, what are your orders? Stand by for new instructions. The High Command is reconsidering our approach to the human situation. The transmission ended, leaving Coulter alone with his thoughts. For the first time in his long military career, he was facing an enemy that truly frightened him. Not because of their weapons or technology, but because of their absolute determination to win at any cost. Hours later, Admiral Sarah Chun received an unexpected transmission from the alien fleet. She was aboard the emergency command ship Indomitable, hastily converted from a civilian transport. Most of Earth's military infrastructure had been destroyed in the battle, but the surviving human forces continued to prepare for the final assault. The face of General Coulter appeared on her screen. The alien leader looked different now, older and more tired than before. Admiral Chun, I am General Coulter of the Collective Fleet. I wish to discuss terms. Chun raised an eyebrow. Terms? I thought you were here to destroy us. Circumstances have changed. We have received new intelligence about human capabilities and intentions. The High Command wishes to avoid further bloodshed. You mean you have realized that we will not surrender, no matter what you do to us? That is correct. We have studied your military history and doctrine. We understand now that humans view warfare differently than civilized species. You are willing to pay any price for victory, including your own extinction. Chun nodded. That is accurate. We would rather die free than live as slaves. But Admiral, you misunderstand our intentions. We did not come here to enslave humanity. We came because we believed you had attempted to assassinate our ambassador, and we have told you repeatedly that the device was a malfunctioning fusion reactor, not a weapon. Coulter was quiet for a moment. We have had our scientists examine the technical specifications you provided. Our analysis suggests that your explanation may be correct. General, we sent you complete blueprints and manufacturing records. The device was clearly a power source that suffered a cascade failure due to translation errors. Yes, we see that now. But you must understand our position. The device contained enough fissile material to destroy our flagship. When it nearly exploded during the consumption ceremony, we assumed it was a deliberate attack. Chun felt a surge of anger, but she forced herself to remain calm. So you attacked our homeworld based on an assumption. You killed thousands of our people because you jumped to conclusions? We acted according to standard collective protocol for dealing with aggressive species. But we have learned that humans are not aggressive in the way we understand the term. What do you mean? Aggressive species in the galaxy typically fight to expand their territory or capture resources. They can be reasoned with and eventually integrated into the collective, but humans fight for different reasons. You fight to protect your independence and way of life. You cannot be conquered because you would rather die than be ruled. Chun smiled grimly. Finally, you understand. Yes, Admiral. And because we understand, we are prepared to offer humanity a different relationship than we originally planned. What kind of relationship? General Coulter paused before answering. When he spoke again, his voice carried a tone of respect. That had not been there before. We offer humanity full membership in the collective as an equal partner. Not as a conquered species or junior member, but as an independent civilization with full rights and autonomy. Chun was surprised. Why, a few hours ago, you were trying to destroy us? Because we have learned something important about humans. You are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. Not because of your weapons or technology, but because of your psychology. You fight with a determination that terrifies even our most warlike members. And you want us as allies instead? Of enemies. Exactly. The collective has existed for thousands of years by incorporating different species and their unique abilities. Your species brings something we have never encountered before, the willingness to sacrifice everything for your beliefs. That kind of determination could be very valuable in the right circumstances. Chun considered this offer carefully. It was more than humanity had dared to hope for when the alien fleet first appeared. But she also knew that trust would have to be rebuilt. Slowly. General, humanity will consider your offer. But there are conditions. Name them. First, your fleet will withdraw immediately from our solar system. Second, The collective will provide reparations for the damage done to our ships and the lives lost in this conflict. Third, any future disputes will be resolved through peaceful negotiation, not military action. Those terms are acceptable. But I have one request of my own. What is it? I would like to meet with human representatives to discuss how our species can work together. Your military doctrine and tactics could be valuable for defending collective worlds against truly hostile species, Chun smiled. General, I think that can be arranged. But I should warn you, once you become our allies, you will discover that human friendship is as intense as human warfare. We protect our friends with the same determination that we fight our enemies. I would expect nothing less from humanity. Over the following weeks, the collective fleet withdrew from Earth's solar system while diplomatic teams from both species worked to establish formal relations. The fusion reactor that had started the conflict was finally installed properly on a collective ship, where it provided clean energy for years. Captain Rivera and his crew were honored as heroes by both species. The indomitable Spite became a symbol of human determination and sacrifice. A monument was built on Earth showing the ship's final moments, with an inscription in both human and Zephyrian languages. They chose to die so that others might live free. But perhaps the most important result of the conflict was the new understanding between the species. The collective learned that some civilizations could not be conquered or controlled. They could only be respected as equals. And humanity learned that not all aliens were enemies to be fought. The galaxy became a more peaceful place, not because humans had been defeated, but because they had proven that the price of aggression against them was too high for any rational species to pay. And in the depths of space, human colonies continued to build and grow, secure in the knowledge that their homeworld had faced its greatest test and emerged victorious through the simple but devastating truth that humans would rather die fighting than live on their knees.